I'm Hilda. I'm head cook and bottle washer at Cope Scotland. We are a mental and emotional wellbeing charity, and we recognise the macro level issues that can impact on people's well-being. So I am no expert on environmental issues. I am interested in what's happening to the planet because I care about the planet and I care about the impact that's having on people. And I offered to do this today because there's some tools that we're aware of around networking, which I thought perhaps the network might find helpful. So just to lay my table out, I'm not here as an expert on climate activism. I'm here to share a tool which perhaps can help build networks where people who have that expertise can connect with others who want to make a difference so we can move forward and actually have some change. So what we're going to cover today is an overview of the themes from the last session, just to touch base and remind ourselves, so what came up the last time we were here? Some ideas to consider around the themes, an introduction to network weaving, a jigsaw lid for climate activism, which I put together, and I'll talk more about that later for the session, and an introduction to another couple of tools, 15 seconds, 30 minutes, and liberating structures. But what I thought I would do before we started was just do a little exercise just to bring us into the moment. And if I could invite everyone, please, if you don't mind putting off your microphone, because sometimes that creates a feedback loop. So if everyone could just put their microphone off just now, that would be really kind. Thank you very much. So the little postcard there was a card we co-designed with people we were working with around things that they wanted to do to be kind to the world. Recycling, cutting down in waste, scattering wildflower seeds, being part of helping build a better future for children, take the time to listen to others who may be hurting, find a way to contribute to my community, practicing mindfulness and kindness, and the planet's future matters to me. And since that little postcard was created, I'm delighted to say we have now got Grow Chapel, which is a community growing and allotment initiative. It just came on stream because of COVID, just came on stream this month. So all the plots have been allocated. We worked together to put together a handbook on allotments, gardening, being kind to the earth, looking after the worms. So that's all on our website, and I'll put that link in if anyone would like access to that. But what I would like everyone to do for now, if they don't mind, is just make yourself as comfortable as you can. Put your feet on the floor, and we're just going to do a little breathing exercise just to bring ourselves into the moment. Just make yourself comfortable, put your feet on the floor, and if you want to put your camera off, that's fine. If you want to close your eyes, that's fine too, whatever works for you. Because what we're going to do for a moment is just pause. Sometimes we find that we're rushing from one thing to another, and it never feels as if we're just in this moment. Because our mind is either thinking about what's just happened or what else we need to do. As if there's a drumbeat that's been set by someone else that's driving our feet forward at a pace which is not always good for our well-being, which doesn't give us time to think or reflect or be in the moment. Making time every day to pause and be and not be doing matters for our self-care. To find our own natural breathing rhythm that works for us. To feel the energy of the earth being pulled up through our feet and recharging our body. And whether we be standing outside with bare feet on the grass, or 20 stories up in a high-rise flat, that energy will find us when we open ourselves to what's around us. Like a butterfly spreads its wings to be recharged by the energy of the sun, we too can feel recharged by the energy of the world around us when we stop and pause and find our own natural rhythm. Like waves gently lapping on a sandy beach, or leaves blowing softly on a summer breeze, or an eagle riding the thermals as it soars above the world. We too are part of that rich tapestry. There is a world that is so much larger than ourselves, but a part of a world that we are connected to when we stop and pause and give ourselves permission to be and not be doing, to find our own natural rhythm that works for us. To realize that we matter, that our well-being matters, that self-care is not self-indulgent. In fact, it's often self-preservation. So anytime, whether you feel overwhelmed or not, make time during the day just to pause and be and not be doing. Remember, you matter. And in a moment, we're going to come back into the session and carry on with exploring how we can weave networks to build a kinder world for the planet, ourselves, and each other, and to carry kindness in our hearts to ourselves, to each other, and to the planet, because kindness is something that does recharge our energy levels. So if you feel the need to yawn or stretch as you come back into the session, do what is most comfortable for you, remembering that you matter. And it's allowed to make time for your own self-care. And we're going to start back into the session as you stretch and yawn and come back into the moment. Focusing only on the now, and whatever else is happening can wait. Like a big bag of potatoes that's been put down for a while. We'll just focus on the now. Thank you for listening. Now, for anyone who found that helpful and they would like to practice techniques like that on a regular basis, please feel free to visit our site, and I will pop, it's all free, I will pop some links into the website. There's a 5-minute being in the moment exercise there, because seriously folks, we do this because we care, and we've all got a road ahead of us, so it really matters that we also look after ourselves. So, the themes that emerged from the last session when we were all got together was about capacity. There was a real challenge sometimes that there's really good ideas, good pieces of work start, and then funding runs out, maintaining people's enthusiasm and motivation when it's really hard to plan because you don't know in 6 months' time whether or not things are going to happen. And then, of course, the additional challenges that the pandemic has caused has also had an impact. There was also a recognition that there can be a competition between organisations, which can make it difficult to foster collaborative working. Because if there's only so much money and there's so many people going for that pot of money, then rather than collaborating, we can find ourselves in competition. And that's why networks like this really matter, because collaborative bids can be put together, which actually strengthen what people are applying for, because that it's not always that we need to get the money. I just facilitated a session recently around the new mental health fund. My own organisation isn't planning to apply to that. We have a lot of community groups emerged that £10,000 would make a huge difference to them. So we saw a role in that as a catalyst to bring people together to explore ideas. So it's not always that we need to get the money. It's the community, the planet needs to see the change, and it's how we work together to support that change happening. And when we do that, then at times when it's something we are looking for the money for, we then find we've got partners who are willing to work and help with us, because together we can be the change. There was also recognition communication needs to be improved, that there's some great stuff going on out there, but it's not always that people know about it. And also I sense a greater transparency about what's happening in the wider city. So there's some people who are really well connected who can get involved in climate action because they know what's happening, but there's a whole chunk of other people who maybe want to get involved but actually are out the loop and they're not quite sure how they can do that. Also, we spoke about connections and the fact that there were already great connections between the third sector groups, but there were still gaps. Sometimes there was duplication of effort, not because of any fault of anyone, just simply, again, sometimes breakdown in communication. People are reinventing the wheel because they don't know that in another part of the city, the wheel's already been invented. And if we could find a way to share what's going on, then we would have a wider impact as we learn from each other. And that's what's really good about this network. But also it broadens our understanding about how climate change is affecting people across the world, and not just in our own backyard. And when we become ecocentric and we consider the needs of others as well as the needs of our own, not only can that help energize us, but it can mobilize us to work with people in new ways to find new solutions rather than get caught in a spiral of despair. There's a recognition that it's important about listening, and also that the larger agencies perhaps don't listen to communities and organisations as much as they should. And I think probably we've seen some evidence of that during COP26, where there were some really clear messages that were being shared, and some you wonder where they actually picked up. Was that heard? Let's wait and see what emerges. But certainly there needs to be more around actually knowing that you're being listened to and heard. We also shared that there needed to be more diversity among those that participated in climate action, particularly from specific communities that maybe aren't are active but are working in isolation. So it's how do we as a network ensure inclusivity, ensure a diversity, and find ways to involve everybody, because at the end of the day we are one family and planet Earth is our home. We may all live in different rooms, but this planet we all share in common, so we are one big family, and it's how we find ways to connect with each other that will make a difference. Also, we spoke last time about accountability and the challenges of greenwashing and tokenistic changes, and how there needs to be some better way to hold people to account along the lines of, you said you were going to do that, what's happened? And going out and buying a forest that already exists isn't really, it's maybe following the letter of the law, but it's not following the spirit of the values that we're trying to create. So I think it's important that we find ways to share what we're thinking. From what I've heard so far, I think, well, that would be good for a future session, climate solutions audit. I'm glad that was a helpful recap for people that maybe weren't at the next meeting, and maybe it's something we do at the beginning of each meeting, is just do a recap. I think the opportunities, we first of all had to identify, well, what's the challenges? And then once we've identified the challenges, it's then going forwards, okay, so what can we do about it? Because sometimes in seeking solutions, we need to understand what the challenge is. And I think what was coming up last time has come up again is the importance of collaboration, communication, and working together. Now I'm going to move on because I want to try and share as much as I can here, but also offer as much space as possible for people to get into groups, because that's really where we start to make changes, when we connect with each other as individuals. Because it's amazing the plethora of resources that's out there, that when we share them, it's like, wow, that's really good. Like the audit tool, that's really good. So I know I'm presenting just now, but I'm thinking, yeah, I'd really like to hear more about that. Even from our own organisation's point of view, we normally do things to celebrate at Christmas, but because with COVID, it's a bit different this year. So what we're trying to do is support some local work that's going on with young people, and also with the food bank. And we're sort of saying, sharing ideas of things we would get, and it's all like, no, there's going to be plastic in that. So it's like, no, we're not doing that. And it's so difficult. There are so many traditional Christmas activities, like crackers that have got little bits of plastic in it that the planet doesn't need. That this is where, I know that's only a simple thing, but this is where sharing ideas can really help, because it's like, have others got ideas of eco-friendly Christmases that people can have fun, that we can share amongst each other, so that money, the limited resources we've got, is used wisely. And also it's good for the planet as well as for people to have fun. So the key things really that came out was about collaboration, communication, connection, diversity, inclusivity and access, responsibility and accountability, and power. They seem to be the key themes. So some possible responses to be considered. So we sort of like, okay, here's the challenges. What could we do about that? How do we use network weaving tools to create more connections within communities of action, as well as between communities, to share learning and work towards common goals? And I'm going to speak a little bit about climate weaving later. Within that, there's also exercises and tools that you can use to promote diversity across networks as well as within networks. So the network weaving handbook is just chock full of resources which are really valuable for networking. And we're very fortunate that June Hawley, who wrote the book in 2011, has given permission for us to make a Scottish version. So anyone that's interested in being part of that, please feel free to email me separately. The idea being that we're going to create a Scottish network weaving handbook, and then we're going to roll out learning on how to use all the tools within the handbook. Also, what is it we want larger agencies in the public sector to hear? What hasn't worked before, what has, and how can we build in that? And I'm going to touch on the Jigsaw toolkit as a resource which may support that. And there's also a thing called Liberating Structures, which again is another approach which may help. We also need to think about what actually is it we want the larger entities to be held to account for, and where can we have those alliances which could help support greater accountability. And the audit tool that was mentioned perhaps would be one resource that would support that. So rather than simply just saying, well, we're not happy in general, we get more specific. So we do want to know what's happened about this, because when we have some tangibles to hold people to account to, then it makes it more difficult for them to kind of wiggle off the hook. Again, I'm going to speak of the Jigsaw lids later, and is it a tool to help share vision towards a common goal? We speak a lot about effective communication, but we need to understand what are actually the barriers and how do we overcome it. And one of the challenges sometimes can be is there's too much noise in terms of information. Don't know if any of the rest of you have noticed this recently, but the email inboxes have just went off the Richter scale. Or you find you've got maybe a few colleagues who work for the same organisation, and you're on all their mailing lists, so you get the same email 6 times. Now, to try and reduce the pressure on my team to be fielding through all these emails, I thought, right, okay, I got all these coming in, I'll have a filter through, see what needs to be shared. Now I cut that down and it ran to 27 pages. 27 pages of information. Now, we're a small team. People are busy seeing people on a one-to-one basis. And it's like, how much of that actually directly influences our day job versus it's just information. So there is something around effective communication is also the right amount of information at the right time, relevant to what it is you want to hear. Because my concern is now there is so many emails that you're starting just to hit delete without even reading it, because you just do not have time, and that only further breaks down communication. So looking at how do we communicate effectively, who's responsible, what are the barriers, and how can we overcome it matters. And I'm also going to talk about another wee tool, 15 seconds to 30 minutes. We also spoke about the culture of collaboration, and there's a postcard we put together in Principles of Network Weave, and I'll share. What are our learning needs around creating a culture of cooperation? How much ownership do we feel around the process? Or does it feel that it's one group that's driving the change and we're just having to run to keep up? Are we willing to share freely as opposed to hoard information, because knowledge is power? And a lot of the time people are like, well, I'm not going to tell you that because you might use it and we need that for funding, or you might use that and take the credit for it, or whatever. And that territorialism of information completely flies in the face of collaboration and effective networking. Are there good tools out there that can support communication and collaboration? And is the Jigsaw toolkit, which we're going to talk about, a resource which might help to find areas of agreement? All these slides will be shared at the end, and along with the links. But I just wanted to put these up just now in terms of some of the places that you can get more information. From what I've heard so far, I think. And that can include other tools that you're aware of, because that could help inform future networking sessions, because I'm a network member too. And the success of our network is how we share with each other. I'm glad I'm not the only one thinking there's too many emails. And I think that is what your climate plan is. I know Cope Scotland in general have always a commitment of kindness to the planet, but we've not really written it out as tangibles. And I don't think when people share emails, they're being unkind. I think they're trying to be helpful, because it's like, oh, that's really interesting. Somebody might want to know about that. But it just seems that, I don't know, since we went into lockdown, the volume of emails has got a lot. Yeah, and maybe as well, perhaps there's another reason why there's more emails, is because the whole pandemic has created changes in how we are with each other. So you don't have that same bumping in to someone and having a wee chat, or a wee chat before a meeting starts. So we are relying more on email to talk to each other. So you've heard me talking about the Jigsaw toolkit. This was an idea that we came up with a few years ago when we were working with communities, voices of lived experience, and primary care partners around what a good mental well-being service looked like, a community that supported mental well-being. And when we initially had our conversations, it was quite difficult, because everybody was coming at it from a different direction. And it made me think, this is like sitting around a table where everybody has got a jigsaw puzzle, and they have a picture on the lid of their jigsaw, and that's how they see the world. And they assume that the person sitting next to them has got the same lid on their jigsaw, but they don't. And rather than hearing what the other person is saying about the pieces that they see is necessary for the subject at hand, energy is put into persuading the person to see the world as we see it, which can lead to conflict, because sometimes people have got different values, are coming from a different headspace, they've got a different vision of the world, and they've got different priorities as maybe better than values. So it was like, oh, right, this isn't going anywhere fast. What can we do? So we come up with the idea of the Jigsaw toolkit. And we're going to actually practice using that in a wee minute, because it's been adapted for many settings, including I've just did this one together for climate action. And it's a way of capturing some key pieces that stakeholders see as matters to them to create their own jigsaw lid. And then you bring those diverse stakeholders together to share their lids. And then you can see graphically, and you can use sensory. So for people with a visual impairment, Jigsaw lid can also be used in a way where you bring items where you use touch to convey a message. But you offer an opportunity for people to see the world through your eyes, and also for you to see the world through other people's eyes. And from that, you can then see where there's areas of commonality. So going back to its original use, when we were doing it with the Jigsaw project, what emerged from doing Jigsaw lids with GPs, wider community, third sector, statutory services, people with lived experience of mental emotional distress, what came out of that was themes that actually we all shared in common. We were fortunate, we secured £50,000 seed funding, and that funded 9 projects with a little bit of money to take forward ideas they had to fill some of the gaps. Of those 9 projects, 7 are still going. New conversations started happening between people who previously perhaps wouldn't have connected. There again, COVID's had an impact on this, but there were new conversations being held in primary care. More third sector organisations were being invited in to primary care meetings. There was new understandings between statutory services who sometimes could feel a bit let down by each other, but actually once they started seeing the world through each other's eyes, realised, okay, so that's your referral process. Or we didn't realise that's what happened. Now we know why this doesn't happen as quickly as we think, but now having recognised that as a problem, what action can we take? So the Jigsaw lids aren't an answer in themselves. The Jigsaw lids are a starting point to look at, well, what actually are our priorities? What are the areas that we want to focus on? So one that we put together for climate activism, and this would have been circulated to you, but for anyone that didn't get it, it's on our website, and I'll enclose the link. This is an editable PDF, not on the screen, obviously. Oh, if it is, I couldn't do it. It's an editable PDF, so you don't need to print it off. You can complete it online, and you can have a screen that's got lots of different people's lids on it. And what you'll see here is there are 12 pieces to the puzzle, and the reason why we picked 12 is because it's not so few that people's opinions haven't been heard and included, but it's not so many that it overwhelms us. And it's not saying, oh, that's it, we do one lid and we never do it again. It's almost like prioritizing. These are the 12 things at the moment that we want to take action on. This is the vision that we have in our head. And in writing down the pieces of the lid, it's been as clear as possible. So it's not just there's a reduction in plastics. The piece of the puzzle, the conversation would then be, so within our context, say it was a household, within our context, how do we reduce plastic use? If it was a community event, how do we reduce plastic use? And part of that might be we're going to go and have conversations with the local shops to say to them, we're not going to be taking your plastic anymore. But it's how the conversations are held is up to whoever is doing the particular discussion on whatever that particular theme is. And the reverse of the lid explains in detail how you can actually use it. But just to give a wee taste today, I would invite people to think about and complete the following sentences. So the first one is, it matters to me we are kind to the planet because. There is a wake-up call. There is still some people that think, oh, it's not really happening. I mean, I was aware in the news last night that there was an earthquake just 11 miles from Loch Gilphead, 6 miles down. And I was thinking, I'm sure that's on the Highland boundary fault. And it was felt in Edinburgh, apparently. So sometimes when things are happening over there, people think, well, that doesn't really affect us, but we only need to look at all the floodings and things that's happening. Even in Drumchapel, where we are based, 50 homes were flooded recently. So please feel free to carry on adding comments there, but you can see already there's a commonality emerging that, well, it matters that we're kind, because basically we need the planet to survive. We need the planet to be here for our children's future. So there's a being kind isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. While recognizing that it gives so much to us. And I think it's great that there's a whole movement now, especially around mental health, about connecting with the natural world. This is me off in my soapbox now, so I'll apologise in advance. My only thing is that it's not that we use nature for something else, it's we work with nature. And that's why initiatives like Grow Chapel are really good, because that's not just about taking from nature, it's about putting something back. And I think the point there that was made about being kind to the planet, because the planet's kind to us, is really important. Yeah, and actually, yes, we're selfish and realise we need a healthy planet for all of us. So the next question I would invite people to have a think about, and things making a difference to climate change now, because I think it's worth being reminded that actually there are people, the Rewilding Alliance, some of the members of the Rewilding Alliance, the clay pits and Hamilton clay pits, there is things, and they're just a couple of examples. There are things happening now, and we need to be reminded of that. So it's also helpful to put in there things that are making a difference, and awareness. Yeah, because when people start to become aware, they do start to think, do I need to make that car journey? You know, do I feel comfortable that to get fruit, I have to take home, to eat my 5 a day, I have to take home 5 non-recyclable plastic containers for my blueberries and raspberries. And I think as well, it's also been part of this network and working with others in our communities and our families. When we are with like-minded individuals, it re-energizes us, because we realize we're not alone. And if we're having a day of like, oh, where's the point? When we're linked into a network, we've got people there to remind us, actually, there is a point. It's not too late. As someone mentioned, we need hope. And also recognition, we need a just transition. And that's true when we look at what used to be a mining village, which is now nothing like what it used to be. With many challenges that community's faced, because when all the pits closed, there was no sense of, so how are we going to help people transition to a new industry, a new way of working that's kinder to the planet, and how do we encourage the people who are currently making money in that way, that actually you can still make money, but you can make money in a way that's kinder to the planet. So that also matters. Yeah, I've got a real thing just now about fruit and veg, because I've got rosacea, so I can't take citrus. And the only thing that seems to be not packed is tangerines and oranges. Or bananas even. Sometimes you're fortunate and you can get bananas that are unwrapped, but other times, nope. Why some have to be wrapped and some don't, I do not know. So the next question would be, things we need to change to make an even bigger difference include. I think that's especially when I think about the climate emergency and inequality, is that if you can afford to buy organic and you're fortunate to have a farm shop near you, but pay the extra prices that perhaps they're charging. But if you're on a very limited budget, then feeding the kids is your first priority. In the 15 seconds, 30 minutes I'm going to speak about later, I think emphasize the point you just made there about taking little steps, because sometimes we can do something that only takes us 15 seconds, but actually that can save so much time. Or if we think about it in climate activism, that could save so much carbon. And yeah, that's what one of the things with the jigsaw lid is, if because you've got multiple lids, once you sit down with different stakeholders, then it's finding the areas of commonality. So rather than rattling people with feeling a bit overpowered, because when people feel attacked, it's rare that they then thank the person who's attacked them for pointing out that they're not doing the right thing, so that the shutters go up. If we can find a way to break down that armor and to encourage people to see that there is another way, that by changing behaviours, by changing priorities for companies, that we can all make a difference. And sometimes there's things that's out with our control, sometimes there's things that is within our control. And this question is one which we can wear all our hats. So it may be how we are as an individual, but it may be that we're in youth work. So what's within my control to address climate change? It may be that we're in a management role. So we're very rarely just one person. We could be a grandparent, we could be a parent, we could be a teacher. There are so community leader, member of community council. There are so many different roles that we have. So it's thinking about within the roles that I have, what's within my control to address climate change. Yeah, I think the free allotments really are so important. And then having that community garden space where things that are grown in the allotments are shared. I took part in a study somebody from Caledonian University was doing a couple of years ago, and it was about buying clothes. If memory serves me rightly, it was about 16 weeks or something like that. And there was a kind of diary that you kept about how many clothes you bought, why you bought them, and so on and so forth. And then you shared it, if you wanted, you shared it with the other people that were taking part in the study. And it was incredibly helpful for making you mindful of, because I didn't really think I bought that many clothes. But when you were doing the study, it actually made you really mindful. And when you started thinking about cotton and how much water it takes to produce cotton, it was a really helpful exercise, because it just gets you thinking. It goes back to a point that was made earlier about awareness. Sometimes we don't realise that actually some of the behaviours that we have is like, I was unaware, it was automatic. And I would say, yes, having done that, it changed my behaviour. But what's really important in this is also that we don't beat ourselves up, because sometimes there are things that are out with our control. But it's recognising, is this something I can do something about? Is this something I need to raise awareness for? And that's why networks like this are helpful, because sometimes it's like, I alone can't stop blueberries being in plastic wrapping. But if enough of us say that, I'm of an age where, for anyone who's of the similar age that remembers Halliby's, away back in 19 Canteen, there was only one place in Glasgow that you could buy products that weren't tested in animals, beauty without cruelty in Bell Street. Because back then they used to stick mascara wands in rabbits' eyes to see if it hurt, though by then they pretty much knew it hurt. So there was a whole movement around preventing animal testing on hair dyes, etc. And then the kind of Body Shop emerged as it was in its original form. Halliby's was the only place in Glasgow that you could have a vegan meal. And if you went in anywhere and you asked for something, then we might get a couple of lettuce leaves and a tomato, but that was about it. Because enough people decided that, no, we want to see a change, it's now pretty much the norm that you've not just got vegan, vegetarian, you've also got gluten-free diets on most menus, even in your local pubs. That it's now not testing We're a very rare company nowadays that would test anything on animals for makeup. So there, when enough of us get together, but that's why networks matter. Oh, that's quite good. The life cycle of a t-shirt. Thank you. I'm going to tweet that later. Because I think that really does help to raise awareness, because sometimes we just don't realize. I know I didn't till I started doing that exercise, and then I didn't think how much water went into making a pair of jeans. Just didn't cross my mind. But once you start thinking about it, it's like, good grief. I'm going to make other choices. I'm going to look for more sustainable options. And even if that means you buy less and it costs a wee bit more, it's kinder to the planet. That goes back to the inequality issue. What if you can't afford to buy that wee bit more? Now, what I need to see from governments and business. And these are the ideas, which is a network we can share. We can also take along to our own companies that we are working with, our own elected representatives. Yeah, less greed, more care. We've only got one cake, so rather than having a cake and eating it, it's how do we slice that cake so more people can get a piece. Yeah, I'm right there. Plastic packaging, really, that's one of the things I really hope from COP26. You have a year to remove plastic packaging, and if that happened, I missed it. Excellent, and I think that is the thing, is that we find out what role do our local MSPs have. How can we take what we are picking up from sessions like the network session today, and say, look, this isn't just me, one person sharing this. This is coming from a collective. And we want to work with business. We want to work with the government, local and national. We want to work with communities. But it's a bit like bailing water out of a boat that somebody else keeps putting water into. It doesn't matter how much we encourage people to recycle. If we stop producing the thing that's causing the problem in the first place, then that would solve, because even in recycling, recycling plastic has got energy implications. I know jars and brown paper bags. I just talked to my brother about this last night. You know, when I was wee, and I was helping mum with the shopping, I don't remember things all being wrapped in plastic. It was brown paper bags. And there was a shopping bag. It was a basket, actually, with a wee thing in the top in case it rained. There was no plastic carrier bags. We used to have the grain store. Oh, I'm getting back now, but it was the grain store. You went into the grain store and it was hoppers full of cereals and lentils and scoops. And you just scooped it, put it in the brown bag, and then you think Strathclyde University. Sure, it's Strathclyde University. I meant to capture where have started a kind of grain store where it's a zero waste shop, and that's what we need more of. Places you can go in and get things without having to, you bring your own Tupperware, or you bring your own, I show my age again, but you bring your own containers to put things in rather than having the shop doing it. And I think that's a problem. It's the same as the preservatives that's put in foods to make them last longer, but some of those preservatives themselves perhaps aren't healthiest for our health, the nitrates and sulfites. And how often does food get chucked out anyway, contributing further to global warming? So there is that. How does the shops change their behaviour, and how do we find ways to go back to just shopping for what we need, rather than this huge supermarket which encourages to buy days in advance and to travel to a hypermarket rather than to support local small businesses. So thanks so much for all those comments. This is just another wee tool I want to share. And again, this is on our site and it can be circulated. It's a goal setting snakes and ladders. It can be used for, and again, it's editable. It can be used for personal goal setting, but it can also be used for community, group, organisational goal setting. And how it works is basically you've got a ladder with steps and you consider, well, what's your goal? So once you've done the jigsaw lid, you maybe pick one thing and you think, right, that's the thing just now we're going to take action on. So you visualize, so what does that look like? What will success look like? And you write in my goal and you define that. Then you start to look at, so what are the steps we would need to take to achieve that? And that's the steps of your ladder. And then you've got the snakes, which is but what might hold us back? But then there's another prompt. How could we perhaps overcome the snake? How could we perhaps overcome the obstacle so that we can still take that step? And what's our reward? Because that motivates us to decide, yes, I am going to do that. And around climate activism, that reward might be knowing that there aren't people in other parts of the world whose whole islands are at risk of disappearing under the waves. You know, it's not just an inconvenience of, I'm not going to be able to have 50 different types of pasta to pick from. It's actually our whole way of life, our community, our island is gone. It's not going to be here anymore. So sometimes the reward isn't a personal reward for us. It goes back to the ego versus ecocentric. Sometimes the reward is knowing we've made a difference in the bigger picture. And again, the goal setting, snakes and ladders, the reverse of the poster explains how to use it. So just a little, I really have went through that very quickly, but I would really appreciate if people reflected on if they think the Jigsaw toolkit could help climate activism and how. Remember, it's a tool for conversation as opposed to the answer in itself. It's a place to begin looking for the answers. So network weaving for climate activism, the little exercise that we did there, complete the sentence, that's a network weaving tool that's helpful for streaming consciousness. So rather than preempting what responses you're looking for, you just put out a sentence and invite people to complete the sentence. And that way people get to share what actually is in their mind on that particular subject. So that's just one tool. This was a postcard that we made up. I was fortunate to do the network weaving learning series with the Q community, which is a connected community across the UK, looking at quality improvement within health and social care. But the learning from that can be applied in any setting. And the values for network weavers is to share generally and ask for support often. And that is really important, is about the asking for support, because none of us have all the answers. It's why I started this saying, I am not an environmental expert. This is not, I'm not here today to tell people what to do or what to think, or I've got all the answers. I certainly don't. I'm here to share something which, if people find it helpful, then it's there. And if I can provide more information to raise awareness of how to use it, I'm happy to do that. That we use our own experiences, because when we come to a network, we come often with our organisation's hat on, but we come as individuals. So if we connect with each other and as human beings and not the labels that we carry, then it's a richer network, because it's you that's arrived to the party and not the label you carry from where you work. That we recognise as obstacles, but that's not where we put our energy. We focus on the opportunities. That we do recognise that there's difference, and we create that safe space to explore difference in a way that nobody feels attacked or defensive, because we're kind and we seek to communicate with clarity. Also, we make the most of technology, and it matters that other people's dreams are supported. So it's not that we're coming along for what we can get out of this, it's what we can get out of it, and how to support each other to flourish, and not just what we can take for ourselves. And to see the humanity in everything and to celebrate life. So these are the basic values of network weaving, which can be applied to anything. This is an extract from the Network Weaving Handbook. It's for people in communities of all kinds who want to explore the potential of network strategies It focuses on inter-organisational networks or community networks rather than personal networks or networks within organisations. So from the point of view of this network, the tools in there are really helpful. And it really believes in, if you want to learn about network weaving, then practice using the tools that's in the handbook. And they offer a load of different resources that can be used. And I've just popped in, and again, this will be circulated again, I've popped in the link to the Network Weaving Handbook. Now, it's huge. So if you can't find it on the link, then it usually has to get done as a WeTransfer or a Google Doc search, or just read it straight off of the website, Network Weaving website, because it is really, really large. In making a Scottish version, we are focusing on the first 8 chapters. And we've got support from our colleagues in America who came up with this concept in that process. And what we're looking for is to share stories of success in Scotland about effective networks to inspire other people. So it'd be really good if this network decided, well, actually, we would like to be featured in here, about bringing together a diverse group of stakeholders interested in climate activism, how we're sharing learning, each of us taking on different roles within the network at different times. And again, if anyone's interested in being part of rewriting the handbook in a Scottish context, please feel free to get in contact with me. Our next meeting to discuss this is on the 13th of December. And there's also, we're developing a network knowledge exchange hub. So it's not another network, because there's lots of networks out there. It's a space to share networking tools, and by default to meet other people and to expand their own networks. So again, just to see what you think. Do you think network weaving could help climate activism, and how do you think it could do it? Yeah, I'm really quite, when I finished the network weaving learning series, the first thing that went through my head was, well, one, I need to find a way to practice using these tools, and 2, I need to find a way to help raise awareness. And I've only skimmed the surface of my learning. There's still so many I need to get my head around, because we are interlinked. We do put a lot of energy into connecting with each other, and if we can find tools that can help that process be more supported, then that's even better. Again, I'll put these links into the chat box. 15 seconds, 30 minutes was actually put together by a hospital. And it was around little things that could be done in 15 seconds that could save a colleague 30 minutes. And it was inspired by one of the people who put it together, noticing that when our daughter's idea of tidying her bedroom was to take everything that was on the floor and to put it into her wash basket, whether it was clean, dirty, or actually shouldn't get in the wash basket in the first place. So that took the daughter about a couple of minutes, just throw it all in there, and then mum can sort it out. Or dad can sort it out. So mum came along and said, you know, see if you actually just stopped and only put the things that needed washed into the wash basket, and the things that were clean you put away, that would save me time. And the time that it saved me, we could actually have more quality time together. So the 15 seconds, 30 minutes is just another tool that I wanted to share with you. It's things like taking that 15 seconds to think. I'm just using this as an example. Yes, that's a really nice t-shirt as I wander around Tesco's, but do I need it? No. How much carbon? And maybe that's the thing as well, the 15 seconds, 30 minutes, somebody wants to adopt that into how we can save and reduce carbon, kinder to the planet, reduce waste. Is what sort of actions that we can do that only take 15 seconds, but actually could save. And that's maybe we could even maybe ask the people that put together 15 seconds, 30 minutes, if they would come and speak to a future network. So that's that particular tool. Liberating structures. Again, often a lot of these things, because I've picked them up through being involved with the Q community, they started with a health focus. But the whole idea behind Liberating Structures is around how to create a safe space so that people feel freer to bring about change. And that can be within their organisations or within their communities. Because a lot of the time we feel powerless over what's happening. And that can make us feel, well, where's the point? So a liberating structure could be if you're working for a large organisation and you're looking for that organisation to have its own carbon reduction action plan or environmental action plan. Using liberating structures is a tool that can help have those conversations in a way that the workforce feels included in. Because sometimes it's like, oh, we don't have the money for that, we don't have the time for that, we've got other things, we'll wait and see what's happening. You know, that there's people above us that are making those decisions, we'll wait and see what happens. That doesn't really engage people. So liberating structures is a way of actually engaging people in a conversation on matters which matter to them in a variety of contexts.